Hello! I felt like colouring today, so I thought I'd share with you one of my tried and tested methods for making colouring look awesome. Using a combination of alcohol marker pens, and I prefer brush markers because they're really excellent to use. And then I'm going to do a second layer on top using coloured pencils, and I'm using Prismacolors today. I'll talk more about the supplies as I go, but let's get into it! So first up, here's an example of a picture I did using this method. I found this online and printed it out on regular copy paper. You could see I've still managed to get quite a lot of depth and shading here on the bunnies. And if I flip it over, you can see I have most definitely used alcohol markers because they have bled through entirely. And if you want to use alcohol markers, I highly suggest getting a book that is single-sided. The book I'm using today is Adorable Town by Lainie. I bought this from Amazon and she has quite a lot of books out there, but I thought I'd go for this one. So I've already coloured a few pages in here, and I've pretty much been using these Artex marker pens and the Prismacolor pencils together because they work out really nicely. And I've also been choosing fairly limited colour palettes rather than going for all of the colours together. But see what I mean about those alcohol markers? They're going to bleed through. So a double-sided colouring page is going to have half of the images destroyed by this method. But I'm really happy with how they're turning out so far. The pencils add a lot of depth on top of the markers, and I'll explain a bit more about this. But here's one I'm in the middle of working on. I've coloured the entire picture with marker pens, but only about half of it so far in coloured pencils. Maybe you can see the difference with the depth of shading I've gained from the coloured pencils, and how flat the marker pens are just on their own, with no change in tone. Whereas when I'm using the coloured pencils, I'm moving in a range of values from dark to light. Now, I did consider doing the next page over because I have been doing these ones in order, but I had a flip through the book and there was another one that really caught my eye, and I'll just flip to that one now. It's got an adorable little koala and I really like the suitcases. So this is the picture I'm going to colour in today. Underneath the page, I have a sheet of clear acetate, which is going to catch any ink that bleeds through and protect that page there. You could put in a couple of sheets of paper as well, but I like the plastic because I can reuse it. I'll show you what I'm going to be colouring with. I have this case full of marker pens. These are by Artex. Lots of companies make brush markers. They're all pretty much the same, so anything you have is fine. Bullet-tipped markers will work as well. I just find the brush markers are easier to use. And here I have the entire 150 set of Prismacolor Premier Pencils. These are fantastic for colouring in, and I've been using them a lot lately. Some of them are looking a bit sad, but they are most definitely well worn and well loved. This isn't all of them. I also have another little pouch here, and these are my spare pencils and ones that I have used far more of. So I'm trying to work my way through these pencils first, and then I'm using the larger set as well for any colours I'm missing. I've got a few tiny pencils in here that I need to get pencil extenders for so I can finish them up. They're getting too short to fit in my hand crank sharpener, and I'll show that later in the video. So now it's time to get colouring, and I'll talk about my methods as I go. First up, we're going to use the marker pens, and I thought I'd start off by choosing colours for the suitcases. I'm going for pinks, purples and blues, and then I've also got some greys here, and I've picked out some greens for the foliage. Now, there were a few colours that I didn't actually end up choosing until later on. I just thought I'd start off with the easiest parts first and then work my way to the more complicated bits. So you don't need to know all of the colours you're going to use at the beginning of a drawing. I never do. I just pick one area and think I'm going to use this colour today, and then the rest of the colours will kind of decide themselves depending on what you've started with. So I've had to speed this up because this really did take me a very long time, and there's no way I could talk for hours in a real-time video. But all I am doing here is laying down a flat colour, and I have two shades of each colour. One is lighter and the other is a bit darker. And I'm using the darker one just to draw in a few outlines around parts where I think the shadows are going to be, and then I'm using the lighter pen just to go over the rest of it. It doesn't need to be too fancy here. I really just want to block in colours so that when I start in with the pencils, all of the colours are there waiting for me already and I don't have to think anymore. The leaves I just went in with single greens, because I will be shading these later with the coloured pencils, but they're very fiddly and time consuming, so I just wanted to colour them in really quickly with one pen each. but I've chosen a different green for each kind of leaf so that I will have the colour variation there. I would almost call this an underpainting. What the markers do is basically colour in all of the paper so that there's no white left, and then when you go over the top with coloured pencil you don't have to worry about any white bits showing through, so it ends up being quite a lot faster overall because you're not having to worry about covering those tiny little speckles of white that tend to show through underneath coloured pencils. Although on smooth paper like this it doesn't happen quite as much. Now I'm using a very dark blue here for the outlines of the building, and then I'm going in with the rest of it in shades of grey. Because I've got colour everywhere else, I didn't want everything to be super colourful, so the grey just kind of contrasts with the brightness of the suitcases, and then my eye is going to those suitcases rather than the building. I chose brown for the accents on all 3 suitcases. And basically I'm working around the image trying to colour everything in. I did miss a few bits here and there and I had to go back to them later. So I'm following the same principle. I have a lighter shade of brown and then a darker one just to get some more shadow areas. And I think it's looking quite pretty with just the markers on here. I mean, you could just colour the whole thing in marker pens and be done with it. Always remember that colouring in is meant to be a fun and relaxing activity. And there is no right or wrong way to colour in, it's just whatever you enjoy. I'm sharing with you a technique that I really like to use. And it's just something I've worked out over time. I wanted to add a pop of red in there, but otherwise I'm sticking with pink, blue and purple to match the suitcases and kind of tie the whole picture together. I'm just finishing off this last little bit here, and the reason I use alcohol markers is because they dry beautifully on the paper without ripping it up or leaving a residue. Now I did colour those windows in yellow, but I hated it, so I decided it's going to be dark inside and I coloured it over with grey. So here's the first stage completed. It looks alright, but it's very flat and two-dimensional, so I'm going to crank it up to 11 today. But first let's see how much pen has bled through, and it's a lot. You can see it's almost an entire picture on the back as well. The acetate also has quite a lot of pen on it, but the great thing is you can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and that will come right off again, so it's ready to be used for the next time. I'm going to keep it in there while I do the layer of pencils too. And now it comes to the more complicated part. But I promise it's not that hard once you get the hang of it. All I'm doing is using a light and dark version of every colour, and I'm also using a white pencil for the highlights. Prismacolor White in particular is an excellent pencil to have, even if you have different coloured pencils by another brand. It's worth picking up a Prismacolor White to add in there because it is so opaque. I really love Prismacolor Premier Pencils for colouring because they're nice and soft, they're super saturated and they're really waxy, so when you blend them on top of each other it creates almost a painterly-like effect. And I know that Prismacolor Premier Pencils are quite common around the world, and they're not as expensive as a few other brands such as Caran d'Ache Luminance, which are also fantastic, but they're really expensive. Prismacolors can be purchased as singles as well, and they come in a 150 set. My recommendation is to buy the biggest set that you can afford. If you can get the 150 colour set, it is really excellent. So what I did here is I coloured all of the places that had pink, and then I can put those pencils away and move on to the next colour, which is purple. Maybe it's already starting to become obvious how much more 3D it becomes when you start to include a dark, a middle tone and a light shade of the colour. And when I say dark, I don't mean it has to be black. One just needs to be darker than the other. And you can also use a super dark one just to add in a few really deep shadows. And you can even go for a bit of black, which is of course the darkest of shadow colours. In the description below, I'm going to link all of the supplies that I used today, and I'm also going to list down the colours that I used. At least for the pencils, because they have names. The marker pens only have numbers, and I thought I would just leave those out. But because the pencils are the top layer, I thought it would be good to share those particular names so that you can follow along and maybe get a similar effect in your own experiments with colouring. But don't worry if it's not exactly the same, because everyone has a different style, and like I said, there is no right or wrong way to colour in. Most of what I do is by intuition and just a whole lot of practice. That's how I've gotten good at it. And of course there are plenty of people who are much better than me at colouring in. I don't worry about that. I just like to focus on my own personal growth and hopefully learn more things along the way. I decided to finish each suitcase first before I moved on to the next one, just so that I would have an area of the picture that is totally finished. These pictures are quite complex, and they do take a lot of time to complete. So if you're looking at a page not knowing where to start, my advice is to pick the easiest thing first. I thought if I could choose the colours for the suitcases, then that would help me decide on the rest of the colours that would go in the picture. And by doing the easiest thing first, then you can accomplish something and move on to harder things later, like all of that foliage, and not get discouraged too quickly. This is a handy tip for anything that you do in life. When there are multiple tasks, pick the easiest and or quickest one to do first. You also don't need to put a layer of marker pens first, you can just go straight in with the coloured pencils. I often do that as well, but lately I've been using the marker technique and it's just so much fun because I can block the colours out in a flat layer first and then worry about all the finicky details with the coloured pencils over the top. As for choosing colours, this is also something that comes with time. It's really hard just to tell somebody which colours to choose. It's entirely instinctual when I do this. And I've learned from plenty of experience which colours go well together, so I just recommend experimenting. If it doesn't work out, that's okay, move on to the next picture and hopefully you'll learn something from it, because that's pretty much all I ever do. But what I will argue is more important than colour is actually the value. Now, value just means light to dark and everything in between. And what I always aim to achieve when colouring a picture and also doing any other kind of art is to have a dark value, a mid-tone value, and a light value. It's as simple as that. You could even get away with two values, a light and a dark. But having 3 or 4 creates a much better gradient. And the more values you add, the more detailed and complex a picture is going to become. But really, 3, maximum 4 values is more than enough. And sometimes I'll just do 2 as well. An example of this are the frames that I'm doing now. I used a very dark Indanthrone blue, and then I'm just going over the top of it with white. 2 values, light and dark, but because they blend together, I'm getting a third value which is more of a mid-tone blue. So that just naturally happened on its own because of the wonderful blendability of these pencils. And I decided I wanted the windows to be dark in the end, so I've just got a bit of a white reflection across them to make it look more like glass. If I had left it yellow like the light was on inside, I probably would have needed to colour in the background to make it dark and make everyone think it was night time. But I just decided for this book I don't want to colour in the backgrounds, I just want to colour in the pictures. So it's daytime and the window looks dark because of it. I knew from colouring previous pictures in this book that the foliage was going to be the biggest pain. It's just so detailed, and I wanted to have everything else done first so it would motivate me to finish the picture. And once again, I'm using a dark green, a lighter green, and then I'm using white as my third value. Because the white is just giving it nice highlights, and I just really love that pop of white. To get a really bright white, colour it straight onto the marker paper rather than going over the top of other pencils because it will blend in. I'm using a combination here, so my brightest areas are just straight onto the paper, and then I blend it in with the rest of the coloured pencils to get a nicer gradient. It's more natural. But don't be afraid to use white highlights. They always look better exaggerated in a colouring book than sometimes what you might see in real life. And don't be afraid to lay that colour on thick either. The heavier the application of colours you use, the better the picture's going to look. It's okay to wear the pencils down, that's what they're there for, and Prismacolors you can buy spare ones, so there's no problem there. Enjoy your art supplies and don't be afraid to use them. Now that I'm finished, I'm just going to remind you what it looked like when I just had that marker on there. Some values in it, but it's looking pretty flat and two-dimensional. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like with the coloured pencils. Doesn't that look so much more interesting? Lots of light and dark in there, so much more variety with value, and it gives it a far more 3D effect, which is very pleasing for the eye to look at. I'm happy with how this one turned out, and I really love the colours that I chose. Not to be conceited or anything. You can see the sheen from the pencils as well, so I used a lot on there. I'm quite heavy-handed when I colour in. I also scanned the picture and it looks really great as a digital image. Let me know what you think. So just before I finish up, I want to share a couple of other tools that I used. I have a makeup brush here. It's perfect for floofing off pencil crumbs, which would be smudged across the page with your hand. And I only use this brush for pencils, not for my face. And then this pencil sharpener, it's a Dial 133. I've shown it on my channel before. It's a manual hand crank sharpener and it is full of shavings there. But this is the best sharpener I've ever used. It has rubber grips instead of metal ones, so it won't bite into the barrel of the pencil and damage it. It also sharpens Prismacolor pencils really well, because Prismacolors are notorious for breaking really easily in sharpeners. This one does such a great job. And I haven't had any issues sharpening my Prismacolors, so it is totally worth getting one. Look at that lovely point! It is 100% worth it to not get as much breakage from these pencils. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was helpful. I'd really appreciate a thumbs up if you liked it, and you might want to subscribe for more videos. I've got a couple of other colouring in videos up here for you to watch, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you really soon in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!